All right. YouTube intro, blah blah blah. The Substance is a movie
The
that
Substance
exists.
is a movie directed by Coralie Fargier,
Hmm.
French director. This is her second film, I
Yeah,
believe.
and it's a woman director. Look at us
Woman. Yeah,
promoting women
that's
in the
true.
industry, Peter.
It is pretty big of us. It also starred two women, Demi Moore,
Oh yeah,
famed actress, kind of in a bit of a role resurgence for her. She hasn't been in much
yeah.
lately.
She was in the whatever Brad Pack thing, which I don't know what
Yeah,
that is,
I don't
or
think
not.
I ever checked
Yeah,
that
which
out.
is different from the Rat Pack. Those are
Yes.
like a different group of people, very
Yeah.
different. This Brad Pack is like what, like the '80s. Some random kids are in a bunch of movies together or something. I legit don't know
I
what it is. I didn't
never
bother
watched.
asking my parents because they probably are like, yeah, I used to project onto them or
Mm-hmm.
some random thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
As many films from our childhood.
oh
But she is joined by Margaret Qualley.
yeah,
Um,
the daughter of what's her name? Bad actress, old lady, ugly hag. She's not that bad. She's in the funeral, four weddings and a funeral, and also maybe she's the Groundhog Day lady, but I also get her and the Seinfeld lady confused sometimes.
I can't
But I don't think
remember,
it's her.
but they are.
Andy McDowell. I got
You
it
have
here.
that?
Yeah, that's who it is. She's the Margaret Qualley is the daughter of famed actress, her whose name I just said, Andy McDowell. Um,
Nepotism takes you
for the
many
win.
places in
Yeah,
Hollywood.
yeah, and
Um,
nepotism. We get shit on it as much as we want, but it's in this film specifically,
it is a
both
bit,
both of the main players do quite a good job.
indeed. Um, I feel like we can kind of take this movie through the plot, and then we
I
can
guess,
kind of.
yeah, why not?
So it starts out with obviously Elizabeth. She plays a bit of an aging star,
Yeah, for like,
once famed actress that has kind of faded into her twilight
mhm.
years. But unfortunately, in this world, she is let go by her agent Harvey, played by
Played
Dennis
by
Quaid.
Dennis Quaid.
Yes, played wonderfully by Dennis Quaid.
A really great
And
character, just like weird,
yes,
disgusting, the exaggerated epitome of what this type of man in this position
yes,
is.
exec, producer,
Yeah,
CEO. It's never really clear who he
he
is,
just manages
but that
people in
yeah,
the industry,
it
and
fits.
it's for specifically like this
Mhm.
workout program, which
The show, the ratings. This entire world that Coily has kind of created is very like artificial and like plastic and hollow, and I do like that
Mhm.
kind of trope of like how like it's just the show, the substance,
Yeah,
the New Year's show,
yeah, it's
like
super
the ratings.
exaggerated. It's
It's
super
very
broad. It's not
yeah,
like a super literal
yes,
film
it's
at all.
obviously very much kind of aimed at Hollywood and
Right.
kind of
The
the
industry at
problems that the
large.
industry can produce.
Yeah, especially
But
with the depiction of women, which we're very qualified to
yes,
discuss
yes,
as men ourselves, I guess. But yeah, like women specifically, and just like the beauty standard,
exactly.
how it's used against women in the industry,
Yes,
you could
just
say.
themes of like in general self-hate and like aging,
Hmm.
misogyny, capitalism. It's all the big
A lot of
things.
misogyny. Like
Yes,
every dude in this film fucking sucks as a
yes.
person, and they're like the worst.
They're all
For
very
like, but
like
like what I love about it is
characterized.
for like different reasons. Like each
Yes.
of like the main dudes, like they're not just like doing the exact same beat for beat shitty
No.
thing. They're like doing like alternate versions of varying degrees of shitty things, like varying degrees of misogyny,
It's all
which is
very
interesting.
like campy and like
Hmm.
extreme and like not subtle at all. Like
No.
this is a very kind of vibrant and like loud movie,
Hmm.
which I think serves to its benefit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Because I mean, it's a credited it's like genre, I guess, is a
right.
horror
Or
comedy,
yeah,
and like what else is a horror comedy gonna do but like be in your face
yeah,
about the things that it's like doing. So
yes.
it makes sense.
It feels like a very quick movie. It's two
Yeah,
hours 20 minutes, but it
yeah,
breezes by.
yeah.
Honestly, it feels like it could use more time at some points.
It was
Um,
better than Superman Returns. Check in
a
the
better 2 hours
podcasters
spent.
episode number 4
Yes,
or whatever.
yes, a better 2 hours spent.
Yeah, 2 hours plus.
Yes. But once she is eventually kind of let go from her
Oh yeah.
position as a exercise star.
Yeah,
It's very
it's like this like 90s workout video
Yeah.
thing that I assume people still do
yeah.
to this day. Like my
could
mom
be.
used to have like these types of workout videos. Obviously, this one it's like
Essentially what's taken over by
yeah.
like Peloton and
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
kind of remote exercise videos
Yeah.
you can get.
And these ones are like a super overly sexualized
Yeah.
like versions of them because like a lot of these workout videos in theory are for women and maybe men also. They're trying to I don't know do aerobics or whatever thing that they're doing.
Even
But
if
also it just straight up looks like they're doing weird sexual maneuvers in
not at this
particular
point, 'cause
men.
with
Not
at
at
least
not
with-
at
when
not at
it's
this
still
point in the
Elizabeth
movie,
Sparkle.
but like in
Yes.
general, like
Yes.
in real life,
It
when
gets-
people think about like workout videos, it's like especially men. I'm not one of those guys. I look at these workout videos and I'm like, yeah, that's normal.
Yeah,
That's just a person
I'm
doing their
getting a
thing.
good workout,
Yeah,
as I should.
but yeah, not at that point in the movie. No.
But her life lets go of her pretty fast after she hits what 50.
Yeah,
Like,
Dennis Quaid
he makes a ton
spits
of
shrimp in her
awful-
face or
awful-
something.
Yeah, he is filmed so grotesquely.
I know, it's
and
awesome.
disgusting.
I love the part where he's
yeah.
in the bathroom and it's
Yeah.
like a super
Just
close.
like
it's like the
up
fish
in
eyes
the
on his
face.
face,
It's
like
like
over the
all
urinal as
in
he's
the
pissing,
camera.
and
Yeah.
she's like in the stall
Yeah.
listening in.
because
It's awesome.
obviously the woman's bathroom doesn't work because it's not maintained
Bro,
as it could be. But yeah, that whole scene with the shrimps and the prawns
It's so
is,
gross.
like the sound design and the
Yeah.
score all kind of serve to like
Yeah.
just really accentuate his
there's a
nastiness.
there's a similar scene in another favorite movie of mine's
Yes.
which I don't know if you're thinking of the same one I am, but I'm thinking of Duck You Sucker,
I'm
which is a
not.
Sergio Leone movie.
Okay.
And there's this dude, like a bandit sort of dude, and he's surrounded by a bunch of rich people,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just like eating like tomatoes and shit in like the grossest way possible. It's like spitting everywhere and stuff
Yeah.
like
And-
that. There's another example. What were you thinking of?
The Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
Return
yeah,
of the
yeah,
King,
yeah.
obviously.
I know what you're talking
Yes,
about. With
a very famous scene
when he's
involving
fucked up and-
chickens and tomatoes, and a certain dead son and a singing hobbit.
yeah.
But it definitely kind of harkens back to those like the disgusting close-ups and awful sound design of like crunching shrimp heads. It's
They're all great moments
Yeah.
because it's just so unnerving just
It
to
is.
like watch and listen to it. It's like people eating. That's kind of weird.
and
It's like watching somebody do it.
this movie does a lot of that. She loves her like close-ups, like extreme close-ups of like just the face at like different angles, and it kind of helps like build up that like vibrancy and that like punchiness of the editing and the construction of the film as a whole. But she eventually kind of goes up. She ends up crashing her car and goes.
Oh yeah, she's like distracted by a
yes,
poster of her
of
getting torn
taken
down.
Just a really direct manifestation
Yeah.
of how she's
It's
feeling
like-
at the moment.
Yeah.
And she ends up in a hospital, and the doctor kind of notices something about her.
The doctor's assistant or
the doctor's
somebody, or
assistant.
like I don't know what he was. He was like a nurse.
Yeah,
There's like a main
model,
doctor dude, and there
like,
was some
I
other
don't
dude.
know. Yeah, but he kind of slides her a contact for the substance. So that it helped me, it might help you, and we are unsure of what that means at this point in the movie. But she kind of disregards it for a minute, but she tries to live her life and is very unhappy with it. Just like kind of sitting alone in a great big like mansion overlooking the city, but not getting a whole lot out of it. She's very kind of dependent at this point on having like some amount of sparkle.
Yeah,
Elizabeth sparkle.
that's a way to say it.
Yes. But it's kind of I don't think this movie is necessarily like making fun of her for it or like kind of like punching down at her at all for like kind of being forced into eventually
Yeah, no,
taking
it's definitely more of like she's a victim to this,
Yes.
Corrupt sort of system at play here.
as soon as a woman hits 50, they're just like thrown away essentially.
Her tits
And
50 is what I heard. I don't know if that's what you said.
as soon
When
as
she hits 50? Okay, cool.
She
Because her
gets
tits
thrown
are
away.
50.
Ex-
It's the
indeed.
character.
Yes.
Demi
And-
Moore is almost 60.
And Harvey is not a fan of
Those
that at all.
those 50 tits, those
Yes.
those tifties, those 50
Much
titties.
prefers a new and improved Sue, as we will soon get to. Um,
Which there's a lot of nudity in this film. I don't know how much I'll
ton.
be able to show on screen.
Yeah, that's true. The
Or like
editing might be a little strange.
I could put the fucking woodcutter. He could censor
Yes.
the nipples or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's the blood.
That might be a little.
Because
hard.
there's a lot of nudity and a lot of blood.
Yes,
And a lot of
extreme movie.
yeah, and a lot of practical like weird guts,
Yeah.
like unnerving things.
Yes, especially towards the end. Oh, some of the moments.
I know.
Are pretty nasty.
Yeah.
But she eventually kind of caves in and goes to take the substance. It's in a very like weird kind of underground area. It's very
Like the
surreal.
door doesn't properly work. She has
Yeah.
to like duck
Has to
under
crawl.
it,
It's
and then
like-
what
it's
she
very
it's like in this
degrading.
weird like back alley thing.
Yeah.
It looks gross, but like once you enter, it's like this.
Sterile,
plain white, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. It's almost alien, and it is like no, we don't know. It's never mentioned what the substance is, where it's from,
where it comes
who's
from,
running
who made
but
it, who cares.
Doesn't matter in the slightest.
Yeah.
And I think it really just doesn't matter. But she takes it. She takes the substance, and lo and behold, it's not exactly what it seems.
Mm-hmm.
She is kind of sold the promise of having two versions of herself that are both the same, but one is better, the better you. It's almost like an infomercial.
Oh yeah, the movie she watches, which she watched that before going and
Yes.
to eventually
That's what
decide this stuff.
essentially sells her on it.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes through with it, takes it, and this whole kind of scene where she takes it, I thought was one of the better moments in the film, just like the birthing scene essentially, where she's just in this sterile white bathroom, like, and it's
Where her
like,
eyes
no
her
color.
eyes separate because
Yeah.
like the intro is like
Yeah.
an egg. They're testing it on an egg.
Yeah.
It's like the
Mitosis
intro.
and, like, the
Yeah, it's
spinning
basically
cell.
mitosis. That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they're just like seeing her like eyes split apart and like that stuff when she's transforming. Like, yeah, by the end of it, where it's literally like
Breaking
another
through
person
back.
inside of
Yeah.
you, and it's
Yeah.
like crawling out. It's so like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, the effects are pretty great throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And just like
The effects are great.
gliding out from the spinal column. It's just like it's nasty. It's disgusting.
Yeah, like when like one joint comes out, it's like, what is that? Is that the elbow, the
Yeah,
knee?
yeah.
Like what am I looking at here?
Yeah.
You know?
Great effect.
Yeah.
And Sue pops out,
Mm-hmm.
or what it will soon become Sue, Margaret Qualley, and she kind of pops out
Yeah.
and is checking herself out in the mirror. Obviously, a much younger version, a much more idealized, perfect version of herself. And she kind of just leaves the body, essentially. She patches up Elizabeth's body, the old body, and kind of like sews the back up, which is also pretty nasty. There's a lot of like
it's so weird.
puncturing and like needles.
There's a
in
lot
this
of needles.
movie.
If you like, if you,
You can't
have like a
do
fear
that.
of needles, probably stay away from this. Just
Yeah.
listen to us talk about it.
Yeah, there's definitely there's a moment that with a needle.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
reminds me of another movie with a needle.
Oh, no.
I'll bring it once we get there. But Sue is now free to live her life for 7 days, essentially. The
Mm-hmm.
rules of the substance are set up in that movie, that infomercial that they show, and it's very, very obvious that if the limit is 7 days,
Mm-hmm.
you split and you live in one body for 7 days, and then you live in the other.
Let's
And
say
there's no
instead of you
more-
live, let's just say one body's active for 7 days, one body's active for another,
it's
because
the
they could
same-
they
it's
could
the
be sort of
same-
the same person, but
Yes.
you know, maybe not.
That's what the video says. It
Right.
says that
Supposedly.
you are the same. Like that's what they're trying to do. But it's gets in the very strange.
It's
kind of
debatable.
Metaphysical is the mind in a different body the
Mm-hmm.
same being, or would Sue essentially become such a separate entity
Yeah.
from Elizabeth?
I have
just
some
due to the
thoughts,
same
but
body?
you know,
Yeah.
I could come later.
Yeah. I think the movie does a good job of kind of exploring that
Yeah.
conundrum.
Mm-hmm.
But Sue is then allowed to live her life for 7 days, and she takes the stabilizing fluid, which is extracted from Elizabeth's back and like the most like spinal vertebrae
Yeah.
fluid. Ugh. It's not too bad now, but it'll get
Mm-hmm.
worse. So she is able to live essentially 1 day on a kind of extraction of spinal
Yeah.
fluid called the stabilizer.
Yeah, like every day she has to take it, so essentially she has to always be coming there and back to like the apartment where like the body just lies there, like the
At
other
this
body
point,
just lies
it's just
dormant,
in the bathroom on
still
the floor,
naked.
just naked.
It's
and
fine.
catatonic. Yeah, it's not moving.
Yeah.
It's like a dead body.
Pretty much.
But like Sue is very strange at the beginning. She's like very kind of airy and alien and strange.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, yeah, because she's like looking at herself in the mirror almost as if it's Elizabeth being like, oh my
Right.
God, I can't believe I'm in this
me.
body. But it's
Yeah.
also almost like, well, she's just like, if she is a separate entity thing,
Yeah.
it's like, well, it's the first time that they're having any feelings at all.
It's not quite a birthing scene,
Yeah.
but it is essentially,
Yeah.
as will be explored in the movie. But Sue then goes to the same agency that Elizabeth was just let go of, and
Oh, yeah.
they're hiring replacements for Elizabeth. And obviously, this young, new, hot thing, Sue, walks up to the auditions and just smashes it. She is essentially
Yeah.
in just exuding sexuality in her kind of like audition tape, and just like enough to like drive the critics wild.
Yeah,
Just, like,
wild.
staring, just slack jawed over like what is like essentially just like a strip show. Like it's
Yeah,
pretty
like they're
pretty
they're
insane.
auditions for
Yes.
the whatever thing. It's I mean the dudes like ask measurements or whatever.
Yeah.
And like the like the interview that's like the third question out of like age
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
age weight measurements.
Obviously like the most kind of dehumanizing
Yeah.
questions that you could ask are being asked for.
Or like are those three questions in a row when you're trying to audition for
Yeah,
something?
and there's never kind of a woman on the judging panel. It's always
Yeah.
just like a bunch of like old men.
Mhm.
It kind of fits the
Yeah, it's,
this
it's all
weird
dudes in
alternate
control. Like
version
the Dennis Quaid and his
slash heightened
assistants,
version. Yeah.
the other like men he works with, and like the.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention too much when they were on set. Like the camera crew and like the director on set there, they all look to be men. I could be wrong
Yeah.
about like maybe there
It's
was
only
one
like the backup dancers
female
that are
worker.
female.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Sue is able to kind of gain a lot of success picking up
Yeah.
where Elizabeth left off. She like meets with Harvey, Dennis's character, and is just like, this wonderful girl, she's so amazing. We're gonna have you on everything. The ratings are gonna be through the roof. He's just like this super heightened, awful character. He's just like, he's one of the more funny parts of the movie.
Yeah, totally.
Despite how awful he is.
Mhm.
And like, oh yeah, he brings her up to like his kind of penthouse and just like parades her around the office with like, just like he has like some of his friends over and they're, like meeting him. And they're just kind of leering. It does a good. The movie does a good job of framing that kind of like oppressive stare and presence that she is kind of feeling. Although she's kind of celebrating at this point because
Yeah, she's super cool with
She's Elizabeth.
literally everything that's going on because
She
she's
was
happy just to
Elizabeth.
be like doing
Yes,
it.
exactly.
You know, it's a matter of like she doesn't even have a choice to like try to make something better out of it. It's just like this is the thing that I have and I'm gonna run with it type of
because
thing.
she was Elizabeth just yesterday and
Right.
she had lost everything, and now is quickly able to kind of regain what she lost as Sue.
Literally just doing the same exact stuff,
same
but
thing.
in a younger body.
Yeah, and it's kind of that like that desire and like kind of expectation that has been placed on her that is kind of forcing her into the same avenue, like living the same life essentially, just because like that is what she has been kind of impressioned to need.
Right.
But after 7 days is up, she has to go back, and Elizabeth just kind of waits in the meantime. Like,
Yeah, she doesn't have shit else
she
going
doesn't really
on.
have
Like the
anything to do.
biggest thing she has going on besides Sue is like there's this random dude. I forget when he shows up, but he like
It's not
it's
at
like
this point, yeah.
it's like some dude from their
past.
grade school or high school. They
I
like
think
went
she
to the same
met
school.
him at the hospital. She was outside the
Like when she
hospital.
left.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he kind of gives her number. He's a bit of like a kind of like a nerdy, bumbling kind of
Yeah.
character, but like he's essentially the only tie she has to a world
Like
that
a
she
yeah
lost,
past
essentially.
like a more normal
Yeah,
world
exactly.
and stuff like that. And like I couldn't tell if he was like if it was a legitimate like bump into this person's situation
Mm.
and he's like being surprised by that because like in the background behind him there's like a black taxi that I'm like I'm thinking in my head like maybe he took that and is like
Mm-hmm. Right.
pretending to be like
Yeah.
oh my god it's you, I didn't expect you to be here, definitely
Another
type of
weird
thing.
man
Like I don't know,
character.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I could see that being like a thing.
Yeah. She is essentially like initially she's pretty much ignores it. Like she kind of leaves the
Right.
paper and
You know,
doesn't
which
really
you should
think
do
about
because
it.
it's like, you're on this level and he's on this level. But
Exactly.
like,
But he'll come back up later. But in the meantime, Elizabeth is just kind of like watching the TV
Yeah.
alone in
She
the
doesn't really-
apartment. She like,
yeah.
doesn't really leave because she's ugly at this point, or what she
Ugly,
believes is ugly.
yeah.
Nothing has really changed about her yet. But after being viewed as Sue, it's just not the same. And she kind of is embarrassed or a bit agoraphobic at this point. But she just sees Sue on the television, and it kind of feeds her self-loathing and her self-hatred, and she kind of stays inside until it's back for Sue in another 7 weeks or 7 days. And this time, she does her Sue thing, dancing and getting all the ratings, but she's now kind of enjoying herself even more. She's
Right.
partying, and she meets a guy and brings her home on day 7.
Damn.
At
That's
11
not the
o'clock,
time to do that.
11 p.m.
Remember the rule, the
Remember
one
the
thing you
rule.
had to do.
This movie is very much, it reminds me of like a fairy tale, like a very twisted fairy tale. but,
Yeah.
like,
Where
the
it's
fairy
like a
tale
super obvious thing a
mixed
character
with, like-
shouldn't do, but
yeah,
they're going to do it anyways because
exactly.
for one drama, but then also,
Yes.
how else do you get the lesson learned unless
Yeah.
the character fucks up?
We have the princess and the hag in the same kind of character, and we
Yeah, I
split,
guess,
and
yeah.
they go further and further until they eventually meet back up.
Yeah, because usually it's the other way around where
Right.
they're separate and the hag is trying to use the princess to like become her or
Yes,
something.
but
Or steal her youth
it's a
or whatever.
modern
I never
retelling.
thought about it like that. It is kind of like that,
I
but like
think
an
I-
inverse version.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the director probably was
Yeah.
definitely thinking in terms of like that
Yeah.
kind of like folklore, like
Mhm.
kind of it's almost like a common like common folk tale that you kind of like you can understand the structure of, and it serves fairly well in this case.
Mhm.
But obviously Sue is now kind of riding on excess, and she's is wanting more, and she is kind of her nose starts to bleed as day 7 comes to a close, and she kind of remembers, oh, after day 7, what else can I do? That I don't have enough stabilizer. Well, she is a bit greedy at this point in time and wants to get her rocks off with her man, and goes to the bathroom and the body, which at this point she has created.
Did she do that by this
Yeah.
point? She like
Yeah,
she like
exactly.
finds a hollow point in her
the bathroom wall.
bathroom wall and like creates this whole thing which we meet like this other character, her neighbor,
yeah.
who's like this super again like sleazy douchebag dude,
yeah.
where he's like yelling and banging on the door, but once he sees Margaret Qualley, he's like like Coomer mindset.
Big time.
Gooner neighbor.
I'll be right across the hallway.
I'm actually quite handy if you ever need me to be of aid in any way.
I'm actually really good at fixing shit.
Just call. It's like, shut up. And she kind of manipulates her way out of that situation,
Right.
and just like disarms him through her pure oozing sexuality. And
Yeah.
she's beautiful as Sue. But in the meantime, she's just creating like a secret kind of closet in the bathroom to hide Elizabeth's body while or whatever the inactive body and it's literally just like hiding skeletons in their closet. It's like it's very kind of on the nose, right?
Yeah.
It's just like leaving Elizabeth there on her bathroom floor is just too obvious and too like
Yeah, because
too
I
unappealing.
assumed she had a maid maybe comment in, but I don't think we ever really see that. I guess
It's not
we actually
really
do
it,
see
yeah.
her cleaning up, like Elizabeth cleaning up after Sue's mess. I think
Yeah.
she does that when she's like all pissed off,
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
Sorry to jump ahead. That's like 30 minutes or whatever from what we're talking about.
Yeah, because as soon as Sue, in present time, goes back on day 7 and finds, kind of goes back to Elizabeth's body, she uses the extractor to extract one more day of spinal fluid or stabilizer fluid
Yeah.
from Elizabeth.
Spinal fluid. That's a different series.
and uses that to kind of have fun for the night. And so in the morning, Elizabeth wakes up and she's kind of pissed because
All right, so where did we leave off, Peter?
all right, so Elizabeth essentially wakes up and sees that her place is a mess because obviously Sue had her boy toy over.
Oh, yeah.
And they were having fun, they were drinking. So there's a mess, and she's pissed off, and she's cleaning up, and then she sees that her finger, her index finger, has essentially rotted and has decayed, and kind of implies and infers that this is because Sue essentially took up an extra day, and now she is pissed. She calls the agency that is running the substance or whatever, the substance contact number, and she's like, "What do I do?" And she's like, "You are the same person. You have to figure this out yourself. Just know that the rules are the rules. You're not getting away with it."
Yeah, which they never really try to communicate with each other. They're not like writing on a whiteboard like, "Hey, person, try to do this thing more instead, and I'll do this." They're like, there's no like back and forth communication between them. It's just kind of like, "This bitch did this thing, and I hate her. Now that she did this thing," or
And
like
then
stuff like that.
The call number is just like, "You are the same person." I don't know.
Yeah, the
what to
call.
tell you.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want the.
It's obviously
I don't
very,
want to deal with
alien.
this.
Yeah, it's like it's weird and it's cold and it's obviously not like a real person, or is it? Who knows? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. But they're not there to help, and so Elizabeth just starts to hate Sue more and more, starts to hate herself more and more, and eventually runs into another substance user at a diner.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of receives a warning from him, the old version of the man who gave her the substance contact.
Which is given with the flashback, but it was already like
pretty
obvious
apparent.
because
The same birthmark.
yeah, it was the same like thing on the hand. So it's like, oh well, that's the dude.
Yeah, a bit blatant with pointing it out in the movie, but whatever. But he gives her a warning saying that the alter egos are going to continue to take, and like essentially warns her off of continuing to use the substance. And so she goes back to her apartment and seems to kind of be, disillusioned with the idea of using the substance for a little while. She seems to be more into the idea of giving this Fred guy, who was the guy that she got the number from,
Oh yeah,
and kind of wants to give him a call.
Yeah, well, she's trying to like I guess like
She
she wants to get over it. She wants to
Yeah.
focus on herself. She wants to like
She's
continue on with her life in a way.
She's been burned by Sue and now kind of starts to reevaluate her life, and it kind of leads to a heartbreaking scene after she calls Fred up and she's like, "You want to go on a date?" And they agree, and they kind of set it up, and she is like frantically trying to get ready. She is obviously now using gloves to try and hide the disfigured hand, and she's getting ready in the mirror, and it's kind of like not super happy with how she's appearing. She kind of it gets her face set, so to say, and is ready to leave, but then sees the big ass billboard of Sue right outside her door, outside her window, and it kind of re-sparks that self-hatred, and she goes back to the mirror and it scrubs it, like just tries to put more on, tries to change her clothes, does everything, changes her hair, and nothing's working, and she just gets more and more mad and furious, and just like smudges her makeup.
Yeah, which is really sad. She looks perfectly fine or whatever
yeah.
in like the first iteration of whatever thing she's doing, and yeah, he keeps going back and back and back to it. It's
And it's a very evocative scene that's just like obviously putting
Why do you guys have sirens on this spacecraft station
know.
that you landed on this planet?
it's there's just
Just
a false alarm.
to
People
remind
fucking
or just to
around.
remind you,
Yeah.
like report from mission control to be like, go to this thing. It's like, yeah, I don't know,
Exactly.
just human things.
But she kind of eventually stays in. She doesn't go out to meet Fred, and is just kind of heartbroken due to the just her unhappiness and like anger with how she looks and how helpless she feels that she can't get herself into a proper state, something that would at least satisfy her. It's a very sad scene, but this kind of leads her to go back to Sue. It's a bit of a sad kind of sordid affair, but she kind of goes back and allows her to continue her career. But there's a strange kind of dichotomy now where Sue has crossed the line, and so neither of them are very happy with each other, because now Elizabeth starts to binge eat or starts to cook.
Oh yeah, she was given this cookbook by the fucking Dennis Quaid.
Yeah,
on the way out as like a gift from everybody,
gift, right.
Which is kind of funny because it's like
it's so sad.
Old women, what they do now
Exactly.
is you just cook. That's it. So here's a cookbook. Fuck you.
It's a really that scene.
Yeah.
is also impactful because like if the day after she was fired or whatever. And,
Right.
like,
the
entire
Or
hallway.
it's the time she
all
comes
of it.
back
Yeah.
and like
It's
and
like-
and when she's making that food, like what you said earlier about the hag comparison. I mean, she's like creating like a witch's brew, essentially.
toil and trouble, make it bubble or whatever.
Yeah,
she's whipping it up in the
yeah,
kitchen.
yeah.
And it is kind of, this is where they go further and further.
Yeah,
as
her hands are
Sue
more
starts
messed
to
up.
kind of overstep her boundaries and is eating into
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth's life force essentially. It's got the Portrait of Dorian Gray vibes going, where like Sue is obviously stays perfect, but Elizabeth is the one who suffers from her kind of overstep and greed, and it's kind of turns more and more into a hag essentially. Sue starts to want more and more, and after she has a really weird kind of experience with a chicken leg that bursts out of her stomach. When she's, like, dancing, and because of Elizabeth's eating and cooking and kind of like gluttony, she is then afflicted by a
tumor in her
chicken
butt
bone that starts to move around and through her body, and she has to kind of run off set because everyone's like, what the fuck is that? And it comes out of her belly button, and it's
she
very
like
weird.
pulls it out
Yeah.
like the entire wing or leg or whatever it is.
And she's pissed. She's like, how could Elizabeth do this to me? Even though she did just like take away like a whole finger. So she kind of gets back at her by obviously taking more stabilizer fluid.
It's
out
sort
of
of
her
just like
spine
revenge, like
and going
cycle of
over-
revenge against each other,
going over the 7 days again, taking even more,
causing drama.
which causes Elizabeth to lose even more. She becomes even more of a hag. She's like, it's like her one knee is like completely knotted and like dislocated and stiff and can't move, and she's like stuck in her apartment, kind of on her allotted 7 days, just like sad and angry and wrathful, and kind of it goes back and forth. But she eventually kind of, it culminates when Sue tries and goes to the New Year's show, right? Her ratings have been great, and she's been doing great with Harvey, and they're like, you know what, you're meant for something bigger. You're meant for the big show, the New Year's show, which is the biggest show in.
It's
I don't
the
know
show.
where this is.
Yeah,
It is
who
the
knows?
show. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's the biggest thing, and so she is obviously ecstatic. She's gotten everything she's wanted, and this will just solidify her kind of status as a pop icon, which Elizabeth
or whatever it is.
Whatever
as a person,
Pop queen,
as an influential
Sue, come
person who
on.
exists.
Yes, she is.
I don't know.
Rats. She is. But she runs out of stabilizer fluid before she can get there. The day before, of course.
She runs out of sauce.
Well, but she had been pumping Elizabeth for that fluid, and this is where you kind of get that body horror of her going back to the spine, which that wound from constantly draining spinal fluid, stabilizer fluid from her back is now it's like really red and inflamed and pus filled, and it's like, it's nasty. It looks awful. It reminds me of Requiem for a Dream.
Oh,
In
yeah,
a
yeah.
certain scene
Yeah.
where it's got that just visceral kind of, ooh, that should not look like that.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's a terrible infection.
Mhm.
But before she can kind of get more stabilizer fluid, she passes out, and we get Elizabeth coming back, and this is after like a month of just Sue living with 23 days more than 7, and just like she's draining all of this from Elizabeth's body, and when she comes back, she's emaciated and knotted and swollen and contorted into just like the most awful
Weird flesh amalgam
old
thing.
yeah,
It's got
just-
her face in the front of Sue.
not this time. This is just old Sue. This is
old Elizabeth.
Yeah,
I'm I'm getting a little ahead of myself
yes
for these scenes.
yes. But Elizabeth is pissed,
Right.
and essentially tries to kill Sue. She's like, she calls the
thing
same
again.
call number, and it's like, if you really want to terminate your experience with the substance, then do this and that. But when it comes down to it, Elizabeth is just like looking at Sue, and like she is everything that she desires, and she's still hooked. She's still, especially now in this awful kind of, she is at her most decrepit and sad and needy, and she can't go through with it just because of how much she's lost at this point, which is, it's that gambler's fallacy. It's like,
Yeah, I know.
I can't lose more.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like it has to get better.
It is that mindset, and she's still choosing to vicariously live through this essentially other person by this point.
At this point, they are. I think it's fair to say they're distinct entities that are not. While they may share the same mind, the body influences more than the mind does, and they can't keep it straight.
Yeah.
And so she gives Sue back her blood in an effort to revive her, and she does. But this is when Sue goes off, and she eventually kills Elizabeth. After a very brutal kind of high energy fight sequence.
Anime fight scene where they're kicking each other, sending each other 20 feet in the opposite direction all of a sudden.
The windows,
makes no sense,
walls,
but it's great.
But yeah,
It makes no sense, but it works.
It really does, especially with the score. I love how like clubby and like techno and just bumping the score is throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
Definitely reminded me of Challenger's score, just like that kind of high energy, high frequency, kind of just driving beats. But after Sue kills Elizabeth, she kind of just like leaves the body and just gets ready for the show. But she forgot to take the, I guess, stabilizer fluid, because lo and behold, maybe like 24 hours later, she's trying to get ready for the show, the New Year's show, but her teeth start to fall out.
Oh yeah. Which I wrote down a couple nights ago. I had a dream where my tooth like fell out.
I hate those dreams.
Which do you get them? Have you had them before?
A lot. It's a recurring dream.
Interesting.
Which
it was scarring to see it in this for you.
It is a bit.
Yeah, but for me it was weird, 'cause I don't think I've had that, because I haven't thought about losing teeth since I was like 11 or something around that age
like that.
range. But it was the kind that like it didn't fall out like sort of instantly like we saw, but it was like sort of wiggly, and it just I think I pulled it out or something, which was weird.
Which is essentially what Sue ends up doing, because it's a little loose, and then they just start dropping. She
loses an ear. We're not going to show it on screen, but it's like just some weird gross stuff starts happening to her. Yeah.
Without a stabilizer, her body is falling apart.
Fucked.
And she wants to go to the New Year's show, but she can't. She needs something.
She's already like on the like pre-stage to go there. She's like on the elevator to like get ready.
ready for the lights, and we're like, yeah, we're ready to roll in 10. Can you do it?
She's like covering up her ear.
She can't speak, and she's trying to cover her mouth, and Harvey comes back.
Oh
and he's
yeah,
like,
yeah. That's a great
"What are you
moment
doing?
also,
You
and
should just
because
smile."
he introduces her to like his ensemble
Yeah.
of old white dudes who
Oh,
are like in control. They
they're
all
just,
have like the
all,
same personality,
smiling, like
and
giggling,
they
and, like, yeah.
I love the
old
way
and-
they dance away together.
Yeah, I know.
The same way.
Like the walks are insane in that entire posse. But they just kind of leave
Yeah, it's
her
funny.
to run away and try and run back to the apartment and to Elizabeth's. No, she's not going to Elizabeth's body. She's going for the activator. And so she, in a desperate attempt to kind of revive herself, injects herself with the same thing that Elizabeth did at the very beginning in order to create a new version of herself. But when you kind of make a new version out of the new version, things get a little messy. And this is where
Oh yeah,
we
yeah.
get a much less kind of sterile birthing scene.
Yeah.
Where instead of Elizabeth birthing Sue, we get Sue birthing Elizabeth.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's what they call the
Monstro Eliza Sue or whatever. Which I love that. That was such a great like because when Elizabeth existed, she had maybe a title card, and then when Sue was born, she like was it just like flashed on screen Sue or something on screen. And we get it again like at near the end
cards.
here.
Yeah. And it kind of brings it full circle. And this is where like I've heard a lot of people reference Cronenberg as like a big like comparison, and the prosthetics
and like weird prosthetics
are
of
very,
like fleshy like creature things,
just like an amalgamation of weird body
like the body parts are in all the wrong spots.
And, like, the face, there's multiple faces, and like
really weird.
It's great. It's a great, like, the amount of work that had to go into it is incredible, and it turned out very well. But she kind of gets ready for the ball or the New Year's show. She's putting in earrings, and she kind of cuts out a face of Elizabeth.
Oh yeah,
and just kind of staples it over whatever the
like tapes it over or whatever
is, and kind of poses with that.
Like puts a bunch of random lipstick on it, also on the paper, or whatever,
and
just for an extra little dab.
There's that moment where she's looking in the mirror, and it kind of mirrors the original like kind of scene where she's like scrubbing her face away and she can't make it to the date, whereas with Monstro Eliza Sue, she kind of has accepted herself to some extent, and she's more pleased with who she is, at least enough
in a way, I guess,
where this isn't Sue, this isn't Elizabeth, this is something different, something more hideous to look at perhaps, but maybe something
more whole. I don't know. I guess I didn't think about it, but yeah, maybe.
Because she goes to the New Year's show.
Yeah, if it does have like both parts of her, they're not like bickering over each other. Because both of their missions, like to begin with, was I want to be famous and pretty again, but like get rid of again for Sue. Otherwise it's the same thing.
Although at the very end, when she's desperate and looking for the activator, she is at the same
because
place.
by that point, she'd already gone through like those early stages of like
she had all and she lost it very quickly. But yes, and so she makes it to the New Year's Eve show.
Yeah, she like walks down the aisle as people are like congratulating her, like over because they don't notice.
The whole form is absolutely insane and monstrous, but the face is there.
It's covering it up,
and it is very funny at that point. It's like, oh, I can't. Everyone's clapping and staring at her, and you get the great like point of view shots. There are a few of these throughout the movie, and it's just kind of showing what she is seeing, and you kind of get the ambient sound design of like her, just like her breathing noises and her like moaning, and it's like she can't really enunciate.
It's just gibberish whenever she tries to speak.
So when she eventually takes the stage and is live on air in front of everyone who watches the show, she kind of speaks, and I think she says something to the term of, "This is who I am. This is me."
Does she actually say words? I wasn't like listening intently, I guess.
She does, and I think this is why I put like the mirror scenes together, because
Okay.
she seems happy. She says that she owns up to who she is. Um, Unfortunately, because the audience is not as receptive.
Yeah, like the face mask thing falls off,
Yeah,
the piece of paper
and they
falls off.
see her for what she has accepted herself to be, but they certainly do not. And you get
Except her.
an incredibly
Over the
gory
top.
and
She's
climactic
a
moment.
monster. We need to kill the
Yeah.
monster.
Kill
Let's
her!
kill her.
Kill her! And all the women are screaming, and
Yeah.
all the men are
They're like pushing
"Get
her
out!"
around and stuff.
Yeah, and she eventually just erupts into blood, just starts spewing blood all across the entire room. It's so over the top. It's like a hose of blood. It's actually just like the shot continues and it's panning over everyone. I love this moment. I thought this was such a great climactic finale. It's like
Yeah.
you could feel the movie was building up to more and more. You kind of got like a bit of a release with Sue fighting Elizabeth and killing her, but you got even more. This is like such a kind of rush and a very like obviously seems to end a bit of a like in reference to Carrie and the
Yeah,
blood
I was
and,
just
like,
thinking Carrie,
yeah.
but like it also reminds me of Butt Boy. Did you ever see that one?
I
It's like almost the exact same sort of like climactic ending where it's like a dude presenting on the thing and then something happens in a very similar fashion to this thing. But I'd try not to spoil it, but it's fairly obvious, I guess, what happens.
Yeah.
But that one's also like this one's a much better movie, surprisingly, than Butt Boy, a movie about a dude who has a superpower to store stuff up his butt or something. He can like trap people inside there
Who would have
and like
thought?
suck things up.
Who would have thought?
But it's that one's also like another like super over the top like weird concepts that could sort of mean this one has like more meaning behind it and like more intention, and
Maybe a
that just
little
seems
more
like a more like weird wild idea of like now there's a scene of a dude absorbing a car into his butt. It's just, and this is there's weird things that are happening on
There
paper,
are.
but they find ways of
Executed.
making sense within the film.
Yeah. This whole climax kind of ends in a bit of a sad way, where she is obviously not accepted by anyone, and so she's kind of torn to pieces. And
Yeah,
it's
literally, I guess.
like, the
Yeah.
audience is in such a fervor, splitting her apart. The blood is everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, it's filmed in such a way where they cease to be human, and obviously the whole kind of perspective of the movie is in a very like it's very surreal, like everyone's playing heightened characters.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not played for as straight as it could be, but she's eventually torn to pieces, and her Elizabeth's face, which was a small portion of the monster Eliza's suit, kind of crawls out of the wreckage and the rampage and finds herself back at her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame,
Oh, yeah.
which
Previously
what-
was shown, and
yeah.
it was shown over
the
time of
opening of the
like
movie, yeah.
of it being made, and then people being like, oh my god, it's this person, and then it's
Exactly.
like, who is this? And then,
It-
no
we
one
have
cares anymore.
Sort of bookending scenes of kind of that
Yeah.
encompass the entirety.
Yeah,
of
it was a good way to
Elizabeth's
establish like here's
fame.
the situation right now with this
Exactly.
person.
It was a very kind of succinct and direct way of showing,
Yeah.
oh, we have this famous star that has faded, and then at the very end, we get a faded star who has now turned into something. It's hard to say at the very end if she ends in a satisfied or fulfilled way, because obviously Elizabeth has been suffering through the entire movie. I think it is very clear that Corley depicts her as a victim of circumstance, of society, of men, but also just general societal expectations of women and fame and appearance and beauty. But I wonder if I can't tell if it's a happy ending. She seems to
Yeah.
have found herself with kind of a monster Eliza suit,
Yeah.
and accepted herself. But it is very sad, obviously, that she has essentially been killed for it.
Yeah, I never really thought about it as in like a happy way at all,
No,
really, because
it
it's
doesn't
like
really seem like
the situation is like throughout the whole thing is just so messed up.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, you know, maybe looking at it through that way, where she accepts herself, but then she is no longer that thing, and she's something else that we don't really know
Yeah, it seems
what
like
she
just
is
like
anymore.
the whole movie seems like just like almost like a scream or like just very like an angry kind of
Yeah.
shout at like the circumstances that women find themselves into, and I think that's why it's resonated so well with so many people. It's a creative movie, just very direct with its filmmaking, but also creative and expressive. It's a very fairly straightforward movie, but it's told with such style and so much sauce that I think it
Yeah,
elevates the
really great
material.
like direction,
Yeah.
and I mean really like acting, like everything you would want in a movie.
Yeah. It's the whole package.
Yeah, like the like my main problems are nitpicks, because it's like the flashback
Mm-hmm.
with the dude. I don't think we really need that. And then there was some other thing, I forget. Like she was given a basket of some sort from Dennis Quaid
Mm-hmm.
when she was Elizabeth, and then like was delivered to her house. And there's like a little card on it. Do you remember what the words on it said?
I can't
It was someone specific, but it was like cool wording, and it's like it's initially shown from slightly far away, and then like if you read it, it's like, oh, that's a cool little thing. And then the immediately after like zooms in on it, 'cause it's like, did you read it in the last scene, in the last shot? Well, here it is up close if you didn't, you know.
It does hold the audience's hand a little too much.
Just on like those
Sometimes.
two moments is what I noticed.
Yeah, but other than that, I think it's a fantastic movie. Definitely one of the best ones of the year, I would say.
Yeah, totally. I think some people randomly complain about like the lack of logic, which we've explained that like
I think it serves.
we defended, because it's not about those things. But like I've seen people complain about how did people not figure out that there's two of them, because they have to switch every week, which is a huge inconvenience to everything,
It's like
to like both of their lives. And like, yeah, obviously people would realistically figure out about that, as well as, you know, when they swap every week, like when they get hired without social security score.
this is a heightened
There's
reality.
Yeah,
We have
nobody's like asking the backgrounds. Like I've seen people, like I've read these complaints, so I just
Really.
want to I
It's
just
like,
want to
okay,
bring
you're
them up.
watching a movie where a woman injects herself with
No,
a
I know.
serum that burns
And then she's
an
like
entire
kicking
new
herself
being.
the other way, and you're worried
and
about
you're
like
worried
the
about
social
this?
security now, like working for a job application, because you have to do that. You know,
Like, we're talking about a place where
Yeah.
everything is referred to as the show, or the substance. This is a strange new reality that is almost a dark mirror of our own, and it allows her to explore the themes that she wants to without having to get bogged down
Yeah.
to the nitty gritty of, oh, this is how she filled her fucking 401k forms. It's like, no, it is very much, I think, in line with like a fairy tale or a fairy tale retelling in almost a bitter and kind of new perspective to take on it.
so then if it's a fairy tale, which usually has some lesson learned of like, don't do this thing, kids, or like something like that, what would the equivalent be for this?
Because if it
feels
much a lesson,
yeah,
as
if it doesn't feel like a lesson learned, it
a-
feels more like this thing is bad,
Yeah.
that that we as a society are promoting,
Exactly.
and we should be different,
yeah,
sort of thing.
misogyny, capitalism,
Yeah.
Just overall having unhealthy expectations of others,
Yeah.
and holding yourself to unhealthy expectations, all wrapped up together.
But one more thing I wanted to bring up with that idea. This wasn't like comments that I saw, but it was on IMDb, the goofs, which is usually just where they, what's the term when there's like a shot of a person facing one way, and then the next shot they're facing like another way.
Yeah,
What's
continuity
continuity?
errors.
Yeah, continuity errors. That's usually what the goofs, IMDb goofs are. So there was things like the stuff they have the fight scene, and like the mirror and the table break or whatever, and then in the very next scene they're like
It's right
back together again, and it's like I don't know if that's really a goof. That's
No.
like it's a part of the film, like the other things we talked about, where it's it's not such a literal thing like all the time.
And also, it's a whole nother bag of worms with how required is continuity in filmmaking, when at the end of the day,
Sure.
if you're just trying to get the best performances and the best story created in the editing room, then who really cares if you've got a cigarette in one shot but you don't have it in the other?
Oh yeah,
If
yeah.
it serves to further the film, then I'll say I don't care.
Shout out to slightly better YouTuber than us, Thomas Flight, in that one
Indeed.
video he made about continuity. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, there's a
It really makes you think, because yeah, and especially when you're first getting into movies, or like
it's nice to kind of nitpick.
Yeah,
and be like,
it makes you feel smart or whatever. And like sometimes I do notice that I just watched Lost, the TV show, and there's like in one of the episodes there's like a couple of those or something. But it's not like as you grow wiser with age, like we have, you care about it less and less, or at least you should.
You learn to value certain things more, and I think that's something that
rather than caring about
it, with your exposure to new films, new media in general,
and this YouTube channel.
And you learn to analyze things as they should be analyzed, and come to the correct opinion on any sort of media.
That's why they're here.
Indeed.
I think that's pretty much all I have to say about it. It's a very solid movie, one of the best that was released this year. Of course, by the time this video releases, it would have been the next Earth cycle thing. But yeah, like very solid. Like it is horror, I suppose. I didn't, it's not like the scariest thing ever. Again, if you dislike needles, I would say. You could still probably watch it, just like cover your eyes. Like some of the point, I don't know what people afraid of needles or syringes do when they encounter it in the wild. Don't look, or something like that. I'd just try that as what I would recommend. And yeah, other than that, there's some like disturbing body horror type of stuff happening. But other than that, I'd say it's well, there's also a lot of nudity and blood, and it's hard to. It's totally okay. Watch it with your brother, your younger siblings.
Yeah,
watch it with your kid. Just show them a good time. And yeah, the super over the top. Don't take it to like literally seriously or whatever. Yeah, great performances, great. I mean, everything really.
Yeah, really great. I think my only issues that kind of drag down my score would be that I think the pacing is so frenetic and quick throughout that at some moments I wish I had more time to breathe with the characters, or maybe had more time to explore. But also on the other side of that argument is we're not really trying to get into a ton of depth with these characters. Like Elizabeth is not a super sympathetic character. She is obviously very privileged as a kind of a Hollywood star.
Yeah, totally.
Regardless of how she was treated, she is very fortunate to have so much wealth. But we aren't really given a ton of depth with her. We just know.
We don't like know any of her friends or family, exactly. Or like random things that you would normally know
Everything
about characters.
It's very flat and kind of plastic, but
she is this thing that
it's purposeful. And I think having it any other way would maybe kind of harm other elements of the filmmaking that are given more time to shine, such as the kind of weird Sue and the kind of relationship she has with kind of her addiction to the spotlight and stuff like that.
Which again, like the term addiction, and the film's called The Substance. You could almost look at it like a drug abuse type of thing, where it's like, because it's like she, at the moment she's splitting off, it's like, listen, I don't know much about these kind of things, but if I had to guess, it's like you do it once, or like you're addicted to it, and then you do it, and then later down the line, you're like,
it's easier to
you're like looking at your past self, and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I just did this thing, and you're like fighting with yourself over it, almost type of thing. So which is quite similar to what's going on here. And it's, I mean, you could look at it in that way also, where it's like this is an allegory for maybe not necessarily just drug abuse or addiction, but other similar things. Which it certainly is, at the very least, abuse of her in her position of society abusing her, or something like that.
It's a very kind of strong movie, like symbologically. It's like there's not a ton of dialogue. It's a lot of
proportion to the runtime.
It's mostly visual and kind of metaphorical, and you get certain kind of reoccurring motifs that help to kind of flesh out the wider narratives of the movie. But I think that serves to its benefit. I think it helps with kind of keeping that energy up without having a ton of dialogue, and more so just like high energy or like very kind of intense visuals that keep your engagement. But in regards to all like the nudity in this movie, I thought it was like it's obviously very sexual, but like strangely not, just because of like that dichotomy the movie shows you of like the horror of an aging body versus like the sexuality of the
the
younger
like
body.
peak physique, because like I don't think her butt was really messed with too much, but like she had prosthetic breasts for the like the main scene of like showing her a full body.
Depict Sue as the most iconic and idealized woman.
Yeah.
But
Pretty much.
It's the filmmaking is obviously like ogling her and kind of showing her like all the perspectives of her dancing is very like heightened and sexual, but there's always something off, and you're kind of,
it's not like promoting it. It's not like fap material.
No.
You know, it's like this is weird and disturbing.
I think it
sort of
would
thing.
be easy to kind of criticize the movie for that, but I think they did it very tastefully, and I think it serves to kind of reinforce the themes of the movie. So, yeah, hardly any complaints besides maybe some pacing issues and some kind of
Minor
blunt
nitpicks.
blunt hand holding.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, final ratings.
I think we gave this one the same thing to spoil yours. I put it an 8.
I think so.
Yeah.
An 8, strong 8.
Solid. Just sits right there.
yeah.
I think for the rest of time.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not close to a 9. I don't think it's close to a 7.
Yeah.
It's definitely an 8. One of the best ones of the year, and
100%.
very very much interested to see what this director.
Yeah, because what else have they made? Do you know?
She made a film called Revenge, but one that I haven't watched, but one that I've heard mentioned well and had good reviews. So there'll be something to check out.
Well, this one was cool. I hope they get more stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Hope to see whatever she has in the future.
Yeah. Well, to end this out, we'll say, join us next time where we review Adam Sandler's 8 Crazy Nights.